In the shadowed cradle of ancient Africa, where the blue Nile winds its way through rugged plateaus and mist-shrouded peaks, lies a land untouched by the iron grip of Roman legions, a realm where faith took root not in marble basilicas, but in the very stone of the earth itself. Ethiopia, the ancient kingdom of Aksum, guardian of secrets that span millennia, holds within its mountain monasteries a vision of the apocalypse so profound, so divergent from the fiery wrath we've come to know, that it challenges everything we thought we understood about the end of days. Imagine, if you will, angels, not as harbingers of destruction, their wings aflame with divine fury, but as celestial beings bowed in sorrow, their tears falling like gentle rain upon a world gone astray. Not sent to obliterate humanity in a cataclysm of beasts and seals and trumpets, but grieving, deeply and achingly, for what we've become. Fractured souls adrift in greed, injustice and betrayal. This is no tale of dragons uncoiling from abyssal depths or horsemen galloping across blood-soaked plains. This is Ethiopia's apocalypse, preserved in scrolls of weathered leather, inscribed in the ancient tongue of Ge'ez, a language that echoes the whispers of prophets long silenced in the West. Western Christianity, shaped by the thunderous visions of John's revelation, paints a god of retribution, eyes blazing like furnaces, a sword protruding from his mouth, riding a white steed dipped in the blood of enemies, dividing the sheep from the goats with unyielding finality, saved ascend to glory, damned plunge into eternal torment, a cosmic battlefield where mercy seems but a footnote. But in the highlands of Ethiopia, beyond the reach of imperial edicts and council decrees, another story endures. Here, Christ returns not as a conquering general, armored in vengeance, but as a luminous shepherd, staff in hand, guiding the weary and the wounded through valleys of shadow toward healing and restoration. Why, you might ask, has this gentler, more compassionate ending been erased from the Bibles that line our shelves? Why does the Ethiopian voice, one of the oldest in Christendom, remain absent, relegated to footnotes in scholarly tomes, or dismissed as exotic curiosity? And what does this omission reveal about the forces that molded our faith? Empires rising and falling, politics intertwining with piety, fear wielded as a tool of control. If the God of Revelation strikes you as more akin to a Roman emperor than the merciful teacher of Galilee who turned water to wine and forgave from the cross, then linger here with me. For in unraveling Ethiopia's lost apocalypse, we uncover not just a forgotten text, but the soul of early Christianity itself. Untainted by conquest, untouched by the sword of state, a voice that dares proclaim, the end is not fury's climax, but a sorrowful return to grace. Let us begin our journey at the dawn of this divergence, stepping back into the vibrant chaos of the early Christian world, a tapestry woven from diverse threads long before any single loom claimed dominance. Picture the Mediterranean basin in the 1st century AD, a crossroads of cultures where Roman roads crisscrossed Jewish synagogues, Greek philosophers debated in agoras, and Egyptian mystics pondered the Nile's eternal flow. Christianity emerged not as a monolithic creed, but as a chorus of voices, communities scattered from Jerusalem to Antioch, from Alexandria to Rome, each interpreting the teachings of Jesus through their own lenses of tradition, persecution, and hope. In this polyphonic era, apocalypses abounded, literary visions of the end times rooted in Jewish scriptures like Daniel and Ezekiel. These weren't mere prophecies, they were acts of resistance, coded messages for the oppressed. The Book of Revelation, penned around 95 AD on the Isle of Patmos by a visionary named John, possibly not the Apostle, as debates rage among scholars, was born amid Domitian's persecutions. Exiled for his faith, John beheld beasts rising from the sea, symbolizing Roman emperors as Nero redivivus, the harlot Babylon as the decadent empire itself. Its 7 seals, trumpets and bowls unleashed plagues and wars, culminating in Christ's triumphant return as warrior king. His eyes were as a flame of fire, John wrote, and out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword. This was apocalyptic literature as polemic, a cry against tyranny that resonated in a world of arenas and crucifixions. Yet Revelation was controversial from the start. In the Eastern churches, figures like Eusebius of Caesarea, the 4th century historian, classified it as disputed, questioning its apostolic origins and its dense symbolism. Some communities, like those in Syria, refused to include it in their lectionaries, fearing its militaristic imagery might incite unrest or misinterpretation. Dionysius of Alexandria, a 3rd century bishop, argued in his treatise on the Promises that its style differed vastly from the Gospel of John, suggesting a different author altogether. Even Martin Luther, centuries later in 1522, would call it neither apostolic nor prophetic, relegating it to secondary status in his Bible translation. Meanwhile, another apocalypse circulated widely in the East. The Apocalypse of Peter, dated to around 150 AD, claiming the apostle's eyewitness account during a transfiguration-like vision. Discovered in fragmentary form in 1886 at Akhmim in Egypt and preserved fully only in Ethiopian Ge'ez manuscripts, this text offered a starkly different vista. Peter, guided by Christ on a mountain, tours paradise and punishment realms. The righteous dwell in gardens of eternal spring, clothed in radiant garments, singing hymns with angels. The wicked face torments fitted to their crimes, murderers devoured by beasts, blasphemers suspended by tongues over eternal flames, usurers wallowing in filth and gore. But here's the pivotal divergence. These punishments aren't gleeful spectacles of vengeance. Angels oversee them with lamentation, and Christ explains them as moral lessons, drawing from Platonic ideas of the soul's purification and Jewish notions from texts like Verse Enoch. Clement of Alexandria, the erudite theologian born around 150 AD, quoted approvingly from it in his Eklogai Propheticae, calling it scripture that revealed the righteousness of God in punishing sinners. Origen, his pupil, expanded on this in works like On First Principles, suggesting punishments might be remedial, a fire that refines rather than destroys eternally. Ethiopia embraced this text fully, canonizing it alongside 81 books in their Bible, far broader than the West's 66 or 73. Why Ethiopia? To answer, we must trace its unique historical trajectory, a saga of isolation, trade, and royal piety that forged a Christianity resilient to external pressures. Our story pivots to the Horn of Africa in the 1st century AD. The kingdom of Aksum, centered in what is now northern Ethiopia and Eritrea, was a powerhouse of the ancient world. Rising from Semitic Sabaean roots around 400 BC, Aksum controlled the Red Sea trade by the 1st century AD, exporting ivory from elephant herds roaming the savannas, gold panned from Nubian rivers, frankincense harvested in aromatic groves, and slaves captured in raids. Its coins, minted with Greek Ge'ez and Sabaean inscriptions, circulated as far as India and Rome, bearing images of kings like Endubis, 270–300 AD, adorned with wheat sheaves symbolizing fertility and power. Economically, this wealth funded monumental obelisks, towering stelae carved from single granite blocks, the tallest at 33 meters, honoring victories and deities. Technologically, Aksumites engineered terraced agriculture on steep hillsides, irrigation systems channeling monsoon rains, and ports like Adulis bustling with dhows and camel caravans. Politically, it was a centralized monarchy, blending African kingship with Hellenistic influences. Rulers claiming descent from Solomon to legitimize rule. Christianity entered via these trade winds. The biblical account in Acts 8:26-40 tells of Philip baptizing an Ethiopian eunuch, treasurer to Queen Candace, or Kandake, a title for matriarchal rulers. This unnamed official, reading Isaiah on the road from Jerusalem, represents early conversions among elites. Archaeological finds, like Christian symbols on Aksumite pottery from the 2nd century, suggest gradual infiltration. The watershed moment arrived in 330 AD with King Ezana's conversion. Ezana, educated in a court rife with foreign merchants, encountered Frumentius and Aedesius, two Syrian Christian brothers shipwrecked en route from Tyre to India around 316 AD. Enslaved, then freed, Frumentius tutored the young prince, introducing monotheism amid pagan rituals to gods like Astar, sky, and Marem, war. Upon ascension, Ezana adopted Christianity, inscribing on his coins, "May this please the people," in Ge'ez, replacing pagan crescents with crosses. Frumentius journeyed to Alexandria, where Bishop Athanasius, the defender against Arianism at Nicaea in 325 AD, consecrated him as Abuna Salama, first bishop of Ethiopia. This tied the Ethiopian Church to the Coptic See, but with autonomy. No Roman pope dictated terms. Athanasius, exiled multiple times for his Trinitarian stance, sent liturgical texts, including apocrypha like Enoch and Peter, which Ethiopia cherished. This early adoption, second only to Armenia's in 301 AD, predated Rome's full embrace. Constantine's Edict of Milan in 313 AD merely tolerated Christianity. Theodosius I's edict in 380 AD made it state religion. Ethiopia, shielded by geography, the Simeon Mountains as natural fortresses, the Danakil Desert as barrier, evolved independently. Culturally, this manifested in syncretism. Ethiopians observed Sabbath on Saturday alongside Sunday, circumcised males on the 8th day per Genesis, followed kosher-like dietary laws, avoiding pork. The Kebra Nagast, compiled in the 13th-14th centuries but drawing on older oral traditions, narrates Menelik Van's theft of the Ark from Jerusalem, establishing Ethiopia as Zion's heir. This epic, translated into Ge'ez from Arabic sources around 1320 under Emperor Amda Seyon, bolstered national identity against Muslim neighbors. Ge'ez itself, a Semitic script derived from South Arabian, became sacred technology. Scribes in monasteries like Debre Libanos copied texts on vellum from goatskins tanned with acacia, bound with wooden boards covered in tooled leather. Inks from lampblack, gallnuts, and minerals created vivid illuminations. Angels with Ethiopian features, wide eyes conveying sorrow, wings in blues and golds mined from local ochres. By the 5th century, the 9 saints, monks from Syria and Constantinople fleeing Byzantine iconoclasm, founded monasteries, translating Greek works into Ge'ez. Abba Garima Gospels, dated to 494 AD via radiocarbon, are among the world's oldest illustrated Bibles, depicting compassionate scenes absent Western gore. Now contrast this with Rome's consolidation. The 3rd century saw crises. Diocletian's persecutions, 303–311 AD, martyred thousands, inspiring Revelation's appeal. Constantine's vision at Milvian Bridge in 312 AD, in this sign conquer, militarized faith. His mother Helena's pilgrimage to Jerusalem in 326 AD unearthed relics, standardizing holy sites. The Council of Rome in 382 AD, under Pope Damasus, began canon debates. Jerome's Vulgate translation, 382–405 AD, favored Revelation for its anti-pagan symbolism. At Hippo, 393 AD, and Carthage, 397 AD, Augustine of Hippo swayed decisions. Augustine, born 354 AD in Numidia, converted in 386 after Manichaean flirtations, wrote City of God, post-410 AD Rome's sack, using Revelation to frame history as divine drama. He rejected universalism, insisting on eternal hell in Enchiridion, yet Ethiopia ignored this, preserving Origen's ideas. Origen, 185–254 AD, head of Alexandria's catechetical school, castrated himself in zeal, taught apokatastasis, all souls, even Satan, restored through fire's pedagogy. Condemned posthumously in 553 AD at Constantinople II under Justinian, who needed doctrinal unity for reconquests, Ethiopia's isolation peaked in the 7th century with Islam's rise. After Muhammad's death in 632 AD, caliphs expanded. Aksum sheltered early Muslims during the Hijra, earning the Najashi king's praise in hadiths. The 628 AD migration of Habiba and others fostered tolerance. Unlike Byzantine Muslim wars, medieval Ethiopia flourished under the Zagwe dynasty, 900–1270 AD. King Lalibela, 1181–1221, born Gebre Meskel, fled fratricide, dreamed of Jerusalem, returned to carve 11 rock-hewn churches from volcanic tuff. Beit Georgis, cross-shaped, plunged 15 meters deep, engineered with chisels and hammers, no mortar, acoustic perfection for chants echoing apocalyptic hymns. These churches, UNESCO sites today, hosted readings of Peter's Apocalypse during Lent. Pilgrims ascended rope ladders, fasting 55 days, contemplating purification fires. Economically, medieval trade shifted to ivory and slaves via Somali ports, funding scriptoria. Politically, Solomonic restoration in 1270 under Yakuno Amlak invoked Kebra Nagast to legitimize warring Abyssinian highlands tribes. Technologically, water mills ground teff for injera, but spiritually Andemta, commentary tradition, interpreted texts allegorically, seeing weeping angels as divine empathy akin to Jesus weeping over Jerusalem, Luke 19:41. Global impact. Ethiopian monks influenced Armenian and Coptic rites. 15th century explorers like Pedro da Covilha reported to Portugal, sparking Prester John myths, a Christian king allied against Muslims. In the West, Crusades, 1095–1291, weaponized revelation. Pope Urban II invoked holy war. Dante's Inferno, 1320, eternalized torments, influenced by Virgil, but ignoring restorative views. Controversy. Was Peter's Apocalypse Gnostic? No. Orthodox in ethics, but universalist hints scared councils. Modern carbon dating of Garima Gospels confirms antiquity. DNA on manuscripts shows sheep from local breeds. Side tangent. Compare to Irish Celtic Christianity, preserving Pelagianism, free will over original sin, until Romanized at Synod of Whitby, 664 AD. Similar peripheral resistance. Biography. Gregory of Nyssa, 335–395 AD, brother of Basil, wrote On the Soul and Resurrection, envisioning post-mortem purification like gold in fire. Influenced Ethiopia via 9 saints. Historiography. 19th century James Bruce's 1770 travels to discover the source of the Nile, brought Enoch back. Mocked as fantasy until Dead Sea Scrolls 1947 validated. Modern interpretations. Feminist scholars like Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza see Revelation's harlot as patriarchal control. Ethiopian shepherd Christ empowers marginalized emotional peak. Envision 19th century monk in Lalibela, candle flickering reciting, Angels weep because every soul was meant for God. A 1868 British expedition under Napier looted Magdala, stealing manuscripts now in British Library, colonial theft erasing voices further. Yet legacy endures. Haile Selassie, crowned 1930, invoked Solomonic line, Rastafarians see him as Jah, drawing from apocalyptic hope. In politics today, Ethiopia's 1995 constitution nods to religious freedom. Orthodox Church claims 36 million adherents, chanting ancient visions amid modern dams and conflicts. What if embraced? Climate crisis as purification fire, not wrath. Global leaders weeping for Earth, shepherding solutions. Now delve deeper into the visions themselves, unpacking layers over centuries of exegesis, the weeping angels. In Peter's text, they stand by torment pits, covering faces. Ethiopian art from 15th century Gondar school shows them with tears as pearls, symbolizing precious grief. Compare to Western Bosch's Last Judgment triptych, 1482. Demons reveling, joy in punishment versus sorrow. Causes: Jewish, Merkaba mysticism. Ascending heavens influenced both, but Ethiopia retained ascent as healing journey. Effects: fostered monasticism. 800 monasteries by 1500s. Monks debating universalism in councils like 1439 Florence, where Ethiopian delegates shocked Europeans with broad canon. Lesser-known fact: the Ethiopic Book of the Cock, Apocryphon, integrates apocalyptic elements with resurrection themes. Another tangent: economic sins punished. Usurers in blood lakes mirror Axum's merchant ethics, warning against Red Sea trade exploitation. Christ the Shepherd. Echoes. Psalm 23, John 10. In Revelation 19:11-16, warlike. Ethiopian icons from Lake Tana monasteries show him barefoot, staff glowing, souls as lambs, following over light bridges. Optical illusion in paintings using gold leaf reflecting candlelight. Fires roll, not Gehenna eternal but Malachi's refiner. Passages, bathed in flame until darkness lifted. Origin: fire of conscience burns vice away. Erased how? Post-Constantine, edicts suppressed diversity. Justinian closed Athens Academy 529 AD, standardizing. Ethiopia resisted. Battle of Adwa, 1896, defeated Italy, preserving texts. 1974, revolution guarded churches. Conclusion draws near. Ethiopia's gift is memory of faith, where justice twins with grief, end as return to Eden's walk with God. In a world of nuclear shadows and pandemics, this apocalypse beckons, not fear but hope. Angels weep, inviting our tears too, for transformation. What if we remember? The page turns back, light leading home. But let's expand further on the cultural ripples, for this vision permeated art, music, daily life. In Ethiopian liturgy, the Kidane Meret hymn sings of Mary's intercession, softening judgment. Festivals like Meskel, commemorating Helena's true cross discovery in 326 AD, bonfires symbolize purifying light, crowds dancing Debke-like steps chanting Gaia's verses from Peter. Politically, emperors like Susenyos, 1607-1632, flirted with Catholicism under Jesuit influence, adopting Western canon briefly. Thus, Ethiopia's apocalypse isn't relic, it's roadmap to merciful end, urging us reclaim lost compassion before our own judgments come. The shepherd waits, light in hand, for us to follow through the fire, not to burn, but to shine anew. What world might we build if we listen? The silence of those mountains remembers, and now so must we. Controversies persist. Vatican Library holds Ethiopian manuscripts looted, 1868. Repatriation debates rage. Scholars like Witold Witakowski cataloguing differences. Biographical depth on Athanasius. His Festal Letter, 367 AD, listed canon excluding Peter, but sent to Ethiopia variants. Origen's fall, accused of subordinationism, anathematized, but ideas lived in deserts. Economic analysis. Trade decline, post-7th century Islam monopoly shifted inland. Monasteries self-sufficient, theology introspective, not expansionist. Legacy implications. Interfaith dialogue, Pope Tawadros II of Copts and Ethiopian Abune. Matthias Meet, 2017, discussing shared apocrypha. Future, digital scans at Hill Museum preserve. AI translating Gaia's, reviving voices for AI-era apocalypses of tech singularity. But backlash restored traditions in 1632, expelling Portuguese, a microcosm of resistance. Technological preservation. Ink recipes guarded secrets, vermilion from cinnabar mines, binding with beeswax from highlands hives. Global echoes. In African independent churches like Zimbabwe's Zionists, prophetic visions blend with Ethiopianism. Pan-African icon Haile Selassie inspiring liberation. Modern lens, quantum physics metaphors, souls refined like particles in accelerators. Psychologists see restorative justice in punishments mirroring crimes, therapeutic, not retributive, emotional pacing. Pause here, imagine a child's first hearing, not nightmares of hell, but angels' tears teaching empathy. Sub-story, Queen Gudit, 10th century Jewish ruler, sacked Axum, but Christian texts survived hidden caves, emerging stronger.